Carolyn Todd, it's absolutely wonderful to see you. Now, don't be unnerved by the dog on the couch because she's not really there.
Ah, good.
Right. This is one of those.
I was beginning to get worried.
This is one of those green screen things where she's a photograph. So if you look at the top of my head, do you see there's a green halo there?
Oh, you're using a backdrop.
Uh-huh. Right. So if I wave my hand, see it goes green over on the side. It's really interesting. I could show you. Hang on a minute and I'll show you because I think this is so much fun. Just 1 second. I can change. I love this background. There it is. Okay, so now.
Oh, lovely. I'll be right
Isn't it great? Now I'm on the beach. But that's not really where I want to be talking to you. So I will move back to the library. But...
I don't know. That sounds pretty inviting.
Okay.
And there are no people on the beach, Barbara.
All right, we'll stay on the beach. I'm going to look into other backgrounds because as often as I do this, I think it's kind of nice to be able to appear to be in different places, even if I'm not. And I know you like to travel as much as I do. So how
I have missed it terribly. I've missed the conventions. I've missed the travel to see family. I've missed everything. At least as a writer, I have to stay home and get my work done. But, you know, I know in the back of my mind, it's a necessity in two fronts, not just one.
So where would you, in the normal course of events, you travel to England in the summer to research your books? Where
actually, we usually go in July. But this year it was supposed to be in September, but they had to cancel it. And I'm just as glad. Things seem to be about as bad over there as they are here. But my friends are okay. That's the important thing.
So in terms of researching a new Russell or a new Bess, are you drawing upon experiences you've already had?
Well, just fortunately. We had done some research last year for Routledge because I happened to be there. And I am so grateful for that because we can do, in fact, we have finished next year's Routledge and I'm getting ready to start 2022's Routledge this summer. But we're finishing Bess for next year. And then I've got a novella to do. We've got the jacket for the novella, even though it isn't written. We have the jacket for Routledge, even though it's not coming out for a while. We're still working on the jacket for Bess. We've done all these production things. And Emily's getting ready to go on vacation, bless her heart. So she's trying to get a clean sweep before she shuts down for a few days.
Well, all right. So in terms of when your books are coming out, you have the two series. One's about Bess and then one's about Ian Routledge. Usually Bess comes out in the fall. So are we looking at a new Bess for when, October?
Not this year. Bess is coming out next year. It was a production decision because they wanted to have us do what I call a novella. I don't know yet until we finish it how long it's going to be. But that will take us into a part of Bess's life that we haven't explored yet and will answer a lot of questions. So I think it's bridging the gap between Paris and Ireland.
Well, that sounds fascinating. So what, then the next book by you and Charles will be a Routledge in the winter?
Except for this novella, which comes out this, I guess, fall. I haven't heard a date yet.
Is it a print novella or is it a digital novella?
It's electronic, and then they're going to have a print afterwards. I think they're hoping to have the print on time for Christmas.
That sounds lovely. I'm very fond of Bess. I know that you led with Routledge. He was your first creation, you and Charles together, and he's done very well. But I really like Bess and her family. And she's been able to take us through the war, whereas Rutledge, except for one or two kind of flashback things, really is the aftermath of the war. So it's quite different.
Well, you know, that was on purpose. Bess not only helped us see the war as it was happening, but she also gave us a chance to deal with women in the war effort. So she really is a two-idea book, and both ideas meshed very nicely, and she's worked very well. But we're going to learn something more about Simon in this, what I call the novella.
I think that sounds wonderful. You know, I've always been eager to read about Bess's parents and their time in India. So have you ever thought about writing something way back when maybe Bess was a child or even before Bess at all about her parents?
Well, we have done one of those in the long short story called The Maharani's Pearls. But actually, we are going to India in the novella to see some things that we have talked about in the books, but never explored. And I think it's going to be interesting. Melinda is there, Richard and his wife are there, Bess is there, Simon is there. And each person has a part of the story. So when you finished, you've heard everything from the beginning, which one person saw, to the middle, which another person saw. You know, you follow the thread through the eyes of different characters. It's fun to write.
It sounds absolutely wonderful. Have you ever, you or Charles or together, ever been to India?
I have, yes. I spent over a month there, went from there to Nepal, and from Nepal to Sri Lanka. So there's a lot more to see in India, an awful lot. But, you know, you can't be greedy. If you can, if you can get away for a month, that's pretty darn good.
Well, I think you can be greedy. My husband and I spend a fair amount of time thinking about how lucky we are. We've been to all the places we've been. Because,
oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, depending on how long this goes on, you know, we're aging, and therefore travel was always going to probably diminish slightly. But now I begin to worry that, you know, we won't get to a few of the destinations we still had in mind. But isn't it great to be able to at least go back in memory and think about it?
Oh, it is. It is. But, you know, I was supposed to go to Tibet, and that was when they found my arrhythmia. And they didn't want me to go up to 14,000 feet and be active. So I had to scratch that off my bucket list. But there's still other places that I want to go. I did a lot of travel with special expeditions for a while to see some of the out of the way places. And it's something I'd always wanted to do. And when the opportunity came to do it, we took it, and I'm very glad. But I'll tell you a funny story. When we went to Spain years and years and years ago, we stayed in Seville. We stayed in the hotel where the matadors stayed. And it was loads of fun. When we signed in at the desk, they asked us if we wanted a room with a bath or without. And we said, what's the difference? And they said, well, it's, I'm translating it into the money of the time, it's $8 for the room without and $8.50 for the room with. Now try to match that in Madrid today. Or
wow.
so.
Yes, it's certainly true. And hotels have had to seriously upgrade to meet the demands of today's traveler. But, you know, now they're having to rethink how people check in and process and live in hotels. And I can't work up at the moment a lot of enthusiasm about travel if I have to spend all my time, which I would, all my time masked, and
Oh, yes.
not able to visit things that normally I would. I worry about museums a lot, whether they're going to be able to sustain the
That
loss of
is a
income.
real concern.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think mass tourism has been a horrible problem for some people. I was just talking to Reese, who sent you her best, before you and I are having this conversation. We were talking about Venice and, how Venice has been so overrun that this has been a respite for the people who live there. But on the other hand, the monetary support for a lot of places, if withdrawn, means that there'll be some real suffering and possible closure of institutions. And I don't think
I
there are
know.
any answers we can come up with for that right now.
There was a concern about that. I've got allergies. You wouldn't believe it in July. But there was a concern about that in some of the places that we were planning to go on this September trip, that if we went, they might not be open. And it's just sad to think about. There's a program on the Smithsonian Channel. It just ended, but I'm sure it's still on demand. A young woman who was born in Illinois married an earl's son, became a viscountess, and she has a stately home, but she has traveled to 8 other stately homes to see how they have met the demands of keeping the whole firm moving, keep it alive and capable of fixing the roof, taking care of the plumbing. Very interesting hour-long series about 8 different houses that most people don't get to. I found it really interesting. It satisfied my urge to go somewhere.
I will try to find it. I'm also interested, I was reading, trying to remember in what, that the Frick Museum in New York, which has some wonderful art, has put on its website, and also I think on YouTube, a program called Travels with a Curator, where they take you to various destinations and are in connection with whatever piece of art they're looking at. And I think that sounds great. I've tried visiting some sites on Instagram, and somehow just scrolling through the photos just doesn't work for me. But I think a video visit would make sense.
Yeah, I talked to somebody years and years ago. I won't mention a name, but he said that he did all of his research on Google and Google Maps. And I thought, you don't get the same feeling as walking into an airport and walking out of the airport and knowing, I mean, for a while there, I could tell you what the different airports smell like. In India, it was curry. In Greece, it was donkey. In Egypt, it was tea, mint tea or apple tea, as the case might be. You could pick these scents up. You can't do that from a screen.
No.
It'd be fun to have something like that.
No, you can't. And, there also are height variations and so forth. There's a famous scene in the Da Vinci Code, which Dan Brown wrote without going to Paris, as I am told. And because of the height, it was impossible for the characters to see or whatever over the building or through the building, and revealed that, it had been done by Google rather than in person. So I agree. I think it's hard yeah, it's hard to miss that. And I thought about, there are a number of programs on BBC TV and Acorn in particular, where you get to tour some of Britain's stately homes and gardens.
Yes.
And, it does make you worry about what they're doing because these buildings still need attention right now, even if there are no visitors and no income coming. So, I think it'll have profound effects. And you may look back at your books and think, you know, I'm glad I captured this place or that place at that moment, because it may not be the same.
The place, one of the places that we use in the Rutledge that is coming out next year has already been closed permanently.
Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. Speaking of
I am too, because we had a lovely time there.
Oh, what is it?
I can't tell you because it'll give too much away.
Oh, all right.
It's a place in Wales. The minute you see the book, you'll know.
We had a lovely visit to Wales a year ago, May, when we were on an interesting tour that started in Lisbon and ended up in Dublin. Went up the west coast of Europe and went over to Amsterdam and then down the Channel and around Dublin. But at one point we stopped in Wales at Penrith Castle, which I really enjoyed. It's a small castle.
Yes.
But what I truly loved is that it has an owl sanctuary. And Rob and I ditched the, you know, the normal tour group thing and went to visit the owl sanctuary, which was fabulous. So that was a lot of fun.
Well, this is the thing. A lot of these homes have particular things that they offer the visitor. One of the homes in the series I mentioned had falconry. Another one had steam transportation. Another one had wedding venues. There were all sorts of ways that they had learned how to make the money they needed to exist. And some of the places, oh my gosh, there was one that was just absolutely, exquisite. They had the Wedgwood blue in the foyer and going up the stairs, and in another room they had columns that almost reminded you of Thebes in Egypt. It was just marvelous to see all of this. I'd hate the upkeep, but I would love living there for at least a week.
Of course you would. We ended up that particular trip I mentioned at Ashford Castle, which had transformed itself into this marvelous wedding venue and so forth. And I'm just hoping that those places will sustain themselves. But speaking of permanently canceled, I imagine you were very sad to hear from Magna Cum Murder that they not only had to cancel their event in October, but that probably it's the end of that convention. I was so sad to read about it.
It really bothered me. Catherine Kinnison had done a marvelous job there. She, not only with the convention, but with making it a venue that everyone enjoyed. It was small, intimate. You could talk to anybody, anywhere. You didn't have to wait until after the panel to go to the signing. You could catch somebody having a cup of tea or sitting in the lounge down in the main area of the Columbia Club. It was a perfect place. And I just loved it. I can't, Ruth Dudley Edwards was there. All sorts of people have been there. Gosh, I can't even name them all. My head is flooded with images of them. And I just can't believe it.
I was sad too. I was supposed to interview C.J. Box, the guest of honor for this one in October of 2020. So I'm sad about that. I'm actually thinking of calling Catherine, and I hate the fact that they've had to exit without any farewell of, you know, any sort of formal farewell, seeing as she'd like to do a virtual convention, maybe on that Saturday that it was scheduled to meet. And
that might work very well.
Yeah, I think we could all get together and do some sequential things. So if she's interested, then I thought I would talk to you and CJ, and let's see, Jeffrey Deaver normally went, number of authors. And it might be nice just for everybody to have a chance to kind of reminisce and say goodbye.
I mean, Revis is always there. John, what's his name? I can't even think now. Gilpin. All sorts of people have been there, and they've been fun to talk to. They all have an interesting life outside of their books. And you get to know more than just, hi, I love your books.
Right. No, I can certainly see that. So Carolyn, in the time I've known you, which has been at least 20 some years, your husband was still alive then. I'm not sure where your son was living, but over the course of time, you've lost your husband. I know that Charles now lives in Florida. Um, you know, you're a model of resilience. How have you kept the writing going and, remained as upbeat as you have?
It was a happy marriage. And that was one part of it. You played a tremendous part, if I don't start to cry, by having me out there right after, between the two funerals, the one here and the one in North Carolina. That helped enormously. And we felt we owed a lot to Rutledge and to Beth, not to give up. And I'm glad we went ahead with it, because there are times when you tear your hair, as you're working on things, but they've become friends. And a lot of the fans have become friends. And I think there was one thing that John would have said, go on with what you're doing. I mean, you should see what you do when you're in a house by yourself. I pick up chairs and move them. I cut down limbs on trees. I paint the walls. Whatever you feel like you want to do, you just get busy and do it.
Well, I admire you. There was a moment on a cruise some years ago where I thought that I was going to lose my husband. It turned out that he didn't have what they thought he had, and he's fine. But I can remember thinking about, how would my life go? And one of the questions I had, because he's such a techie, was, could I actually live in and run this house without him? Because I truly don't know how most of it operates. I would have to take a crash course in all kinds of systems in order to keep up the house.
Well, John taught me a lot of things. And then I could always ask David if I wasn't quite sure how something worked. The main thing is I've had to let the gardens go. We had very, very lovely gardens. And it was something that John enjoyed and I enjoyed. You just can't do everything. And so you have to make a choice sometime. But I still travel. I go by myself if I have to. I've been to 110 countries now. He made it to 96. Linda travels with me now, and sometimes Charles does, depending on whether it's about the books or not. It's very interesting. You make a life as you think about what you want to do and what you want to be. It's easy to crawl up into bed and pull the covers over and say, I can't face this. But then you get up and keep going.
Well, I do think
I enjoyed my life.
Sure. I think successful aging, in part requires you to be optimistic and flexible and try to forge ahead even as other paths close. You try to open new ones, but you stay engaged because you're writing and you're traveling and you're visiting, and I stay engaged. People ask me, aren't you ever going to retire? And I think, why would I do that? Because
I know you've made such a wonderful place in the store. I love all the people there. I hope they're still all okay. It's just wonderful to come down and spend a few hours there and see what books you have in the corners.
Well, fortunately, everybody is so far okay. And as we had mostly virtual community before COVID, it has been easier for us as a bookstore to adapt, and for many. But that's really a function of how Scottsdale is. When I started the store, in particular, it was such a tourist destination, and there really weren't a lot of certainly downtown residents. So we became a virtual store really right from the beginning, except that we did it the old-fashioned way with, mailing out newsletters and accepting checks and order forms and faxes and so forth. And it's just been and evolution. But I think the important part is staying engaged. You know, you have to get up, you have to get dressed, you have to go down and engage with people.
That's right.
And talk to people. And I'm grateful, Carolyn, that even though you're not here, I'm really grateful that we get to talk through this technology. It's not as nice as if we were sitting together having tea.
But I can't hug you anyway with the pandemic.
Right, but at least this way we can stay connected. So let's schedule a talk when the novella comes out. It'll be fun to, you know, to read that and talk about it. And then whenever
I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, and if you can't actually travel here in April, and who knows, when Rutledge comes out, we'll figure out something else. So meantime, do you have any plans at all to go anywhere, or are you like us, just sitting on hold?
I'm really afraid to. I heard Tom Hanks say on a program the other day that the immunity that he had from having the virus has slowly declined with time. And I wonder if that means that you can get it over and over again. Worrying about that makes it less interesting to go out to a restaurant or go somewhere where you might pick up the bug. I've lost friends. Angela Zeman, we lost to the virus, and that was just tragic. So I have a lot of respect for it. I'm really concerned about it.
Well, I think we all have to be. And, you know, if it is a flu-like virus, you can certainly get the flu over and over again. You can get a cold over and over again. So I don't know that anybody could say without a really tested vaccine that there is any particular safeguard. So as I said, I'm grateful that we can do this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm
sorry
really...
I had to put it off, but we were in such a roller coaster that there was no way I could learn how to do it. But Charles gave me a crash course, and I find it exciting. So I think we'll have to get together more often.
Well, we can do it. I will get in touch with Catherine and let you know how that goes, because I do think it would be nice. And you know, we'll stay in touch. We can do this again now that we've figured it out. So thanks for your time this morning. And have a terrific week.